Ryan Day has proven over his tenure to be pretty patient and methodical and thorough with his hiring process. And I'm not saying that he didn't do that with Cortez Hankton, but I am saying he knew that he needed to get somebody in place to fill Brian Hartline's role as quickly as possible. Because once that portal opened on January 2nd, you had Bryson Rogers already skipping out on the Cotton Bowl and leaving Ohio State.
Mm-hmm.
Situations and conversations that obviously didn't go that well with Quincy Porter. The door that is cracked open for Mylan Graham, although he is in the portal right now. Demarion Witten leaving as well through the portal, and Carnell Tate going to the NFL draft. That's a lot. So Ohio State knew that it was going to have to be involved one form or fashion with transfer portal pickups. Cortez Hankton got one on Wednesday, and Devin McEwen.
Mm-hmm.
He is working on Mylan Graham. Coaches can go on the road and start evaluating, so he had to start recruiting 2027 wide receivers. He sent out an offer, Cortez Hankton, yesterday. So all of this stuff could not wait for Ohio State to get rolling. They needed somebody in place to fill out that staff, and it became an opportunity for Cortez Hankton to prove right away what his value could be, would be. You could say it's a test, or you can say it's an opportunity, a mixture of both.
Pressure makes diamonds.
I think so far it's gone pretty well from him. It's not done. The portal window is still open. Ohio State could very well add another one. If it's Mylan Graham, then they may not be involved as much anymore. But, we've seen, whether this is Texas or whether there's other opportunities that might emerge in the transfer portal, Ohio State has been aggressive. Now, they've not got across the finish line. You had Nick Marsh, Andrew Marsh, big-name targets that were out there that seemed a little bit out of the price range maybe for Ohio State. But, some of that situation may have changed with the resources that are available without Quincy Porter. We'll see how that works out. But one way or the other, Cortez Hankton had to get rolling here. And this has been a position group that has had 14 players in it, did a year ago. And Brian Hartline was just rolling through it. It's like every single one of them are 4 stars, 5 stars. That's not going to be the order of business anymore. At every position, that's probably going to be scaled back, but especially at wide receiver. And so his ability, Cortez Hankton's ability to evaluate, to develop, to put together a plan to use 4 or 5 wide receivers in a way that maybe Ohio State hasn't in the last couple of years, which if there's something you could nitpick Brian Hartline on, he is very good at identifying talent, and he was very good at getting Jeremiah Smiths and Carnell Tates. The best talent to come play for him, and sometimes at a discount, competitive discount in terms of NIL opportunities. But the part that became difficult, because really it's been the last couple cycles where Ohio State has recognized if you're spending this amount of money on Jeremiah Smith and Carnell Tate, you can no longer have these classes of 4 and 5 wide receivers, and all of them are going to be ranked in the top 10 nationally. They don't have the resources for that. They don't have the room for it. Playing time.
The math doesn't math.
There's no math that you can make that actually work. So that part, and it'll sound like a weird thing to nitpick, but there were times last season where people would ask us, Beamer, like, why aren't they playing more guys, or why isn't there more production from a Graham or a Bryson Rogers?
Ennis even.
Why isn't Brandon Ennis touching the football more? Well, you have these 2 guys out there. They're playing at the slower tempo. And also, they weren't bringing along the rest of that depth at a level that Ohio State felt comfortable putting, Quincy Porter when he was healthy. Mylan Graham was healthy in November. They put David Adolph out there in place of him, a walk-on. So some of that stuff in terms of developing the non-superstar maybe wasn't as great as Brian Hartline was at every other part of that job. And so that's going to have to be part of this for Cortez Hankton. If we're in this world where Ohio State can still take 2 superstars, and by the way, that's what they're paying Chris Henry Jr. and Jeremiah Smith to be next year, let alone having Brandon Ennis back, whatever it took to get Devin McEwen out of the transfer portal. Set all that aside. If you have injuries, if you need to play depth, what's it going to look like if you identify someone, whether that's in Ohio or elsewhere, a 3-star who's coming in at a lesser rate to prove himself and crack that rotation? That's the part of the job that is not going on right now because that's for March, that's for June and July, that's for August and beyond. But Cortez Hankton had no choice but to get rolling with the rest of the part, the talent acquisition or the retention, both actually. And it feels like he's doing a pretty good job of that. But he was the first person that Ryan Day sort of really targeted for interviews in December, and he kicked the tires on a few others, but this was the guy that he wanted, and we're in the process of finding out why.
Yeah, and also, too, I mean, you walk into a pretty good situation, even though what has transpired the last, 3 or 4 days with Milan leaving and with Quincy Porter leaving. And, again, put a pin in Milan Graham because I know that talks are ongoing between his camp, Ohio State's camp. They do want him back. Yeah. I am positive on that. You did have Brandon Innes say that he is coming back, so you do get, 2 of your returning receivers. Now, Carnell Tate obviously heading to the draft. It is still a good situation. Like, anytime you have the best football player in America at the use
hard to say that's bad
at your disposal, it still is a good situation that Coach Hankton is walking into. But I think the natural question then just becomes it's a land after Jeremiah Smith leaves. What is that going to look like? Because the standard, while being the standard, it almost seemed, and it wasn't even really fair that we did this. One guy left and another guy came in, and it was wow, that guy's better than the last guy. And then JJ came in and is Marvin Harrison Jr., wow, that guy wasn't even close to being what this guy is. And the standard almost got so lofty, and that's not real. It's not, that won't be something that happens. And again, we were very spoiled at the receiver position for a long time. Not saying that you're not going to be spoiled, but the way that it was going, just year after year after year after year, where guys were elevating and getting better and better than the last year, and prospects were, galore and going back to back to back in the NFL draft. Now, I know Jamison Williams transferred to Alabama, but still, that was a guy who was here and developed at Ohio State. It's a lofty room to walk into for a position coach. It is. It's huge.
And it's not, to be honest, just because of what Brian Hartline did. This is not new for Ohio State. I know that there were a lot of, panicked conversations about what the future of that room was going to look like without Brian Hartline's recruitment, without the ability to develop, without this. It's I think it was okay in the 80s. Was Chris Carter here then? Did they have any other wide receivers go to the NFL? Yeah, okay. In the 90s?
Yeah, Terry Glenn was pretty good.
Terry Glenn, you have David Boston. What happened in the early 2000s? Oh, did you have
Jenkins was pretty good. Santonio Holmes was good.
You have Anthony Gonzalez. Did you have a couple first-round picks?
Brian Hartline was pretty good.
I think Brian Hartline made an impact on some of those teams. What about the 2010s? Oh, yeah, before Brian Hartline got here, I think you were rolling through Mike Thomas, and you had Curtis Samuel, and you threw Braxton Miller out there for a stretch, and then you had Terry McLaurin, and you had Paris Campbell, and you had KJ Hill breaking records, and that all of that counts. So when you walk in that room, it's not just that you have to replace Brian Hartline.
Yeah.
That may feel daunting in the short term, but you also walk in that room, and I've walked in there, and maybe they've redecorated recently. I don't know. But all those names that I mentioned that are going back 30, 40 years, All-Americans, first-round NFL draft picks, they're all on the wall. That's the standard that didn't just happen 5 years ago. It didn't just happen 10 years ago. That has been happening for Ohio State wide receivers for a long time. So this program it's not always about just who the wide receivers coach is. Sometimes it's the head coach. It's the opportunity to play at Ohio State, period. Mm-hmm. That's really appealing to players. But that is the person who's now in charge of protecting that. And maybe he won't.
Keeper of the realm.
Maybe he won't elevate it. Because that would be insane. I
don't know what that looks like. I don't know what that looks like.
It's not a thing, especially in this day and age of college football. It cannot be elevated to the level that it has been at for the last 5 years.
But imagine if it was.
Yeah, that one ring to rule them all. If you can keep 75% of it, you're living pretty good.
One ring to pour them in the fire to bind it.
Tell me more.
Reimer has no clue what we're talking about.
Nope, not a one.